Inference Plus Story Short Number 28, Series B. Morning light slanted through the dining room window and caught the crystal sun catcher, casting a slow dancing rainbow across the polished oak table. The table was neatly laid out, with a stack of textbooks, English, math, social studies, and science, a cup of crisply sharpened pencils, 4 spiral notebooks, and a pristine pink eraser. A map of North America hung on the wall above the sideboard, and the sideboard itself was covered with tidy rows of clear plastic cups, each one containing a bit of potting soil and a small seedling in a different stage of growth. A laptop, slightly dusty, sat closed and charging on a small table in the corner. A lean orange cat dozed lazily beneath the table, back paws kneading a warm puddle of sun. Maud's feet padded softly down the steps, forming a backbeat to the ticking of the grandfather clock on the landing. She paused for a moment to pull the chains that wound the clock, and adjusted the hands slightly. In the kitchen, she poured herself a cup of coffee, black, and filled up the cat's food and water bowls. Hearing the plink of the kibble in the metal dish, the lean orange cat came running. Maud took little notice of the cat. She did not stoop to pet it or coo at it in a ridiculous baby voice like so many people did. A cat was simply a cat, just as a clock was simply a clock and a cup was simply a cup. Boots, that was the cat, was a pretty accessory, a pop of color against the neutral backdrop of the house. That was all. Boots had been Robert's cat before Robert ran off with that slut from the office. He just packed up his things and moved out, leaving her and Julia to carry on without him. The injustice of it appalled her. Robert had wanted a child. Robert had insisted. Robert had held and rocked and fed Julia. He had taken her to the park and read her bedtime stories, and now Robert was done. He was gone, and Julia remained, and Robert, swooping in for weekends and ice cream dates, then traipsing off free as you please. Until he didn't even do that, and Julia would cry and howl for Daddy, 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 until Maud wanted to gouge out her eardrums with scissors to make it stop. And the teachers, constantly asking questions, expressing concerns, picking and prodding and butting into her business. That was when it occurred to Maud that she could apply to homeschool Julia, and all of it could stop. And the house could be quiet and neat and just like it was before Robert or Julia or any of the rest of it. She could wind back the clock and make it like it was. There would be the occasional homeschool teacher visit to endure, but that could be managed. A small price to pay for such enormous freedom. Maud hated the monthly homeschool teacher visits. She hated the impending intrusion, the invasive and tricky questions. She felt restless today, unable to enjoy the quiet orderliness of morning as she usually did. She would sit down at the kitchen table and then see a crumb on the counter and leap up to wipe it away. She would sit down again, then notice the apples in the bowl needed to be rearranged and hop up to adjust them. In between tasks, she watched the clock with growing agitation. The entire pot of coffee was gone by 9:15 when Maud weighed her way into the dining room. She began with the math workbook, opening it to a lesson on 2-digit multiplication and quickly solving the simple problems. She sat back, regarded the writing on the page, then switched the pencil to her left hand and made a few careless errors that she rubbed out with the eraser and corrected. Better. She flipped back through the workbook with a critical eye. The work had improved, but not too much. That was good. Typical for an 8-year-old. The reading worksheets were next. Maud scanned the simple story, something about a girl named Polly and her puppy named Pete packing for a picnic, and answered the questions in short, simple sentences once again, using her left hand to write. Pete is a puppy. Polly is a girl. They was going on a picnic and ate pickles. As she did with the math book, she thumbed back to earlier lessons. There was improvement, but not so much as to lead to curiosity. Just the ordinary progress of an ordinary child. As the time drew closer to 9, she hurried to fill in the chart with the plant's growth and pushed a few pins into the map above the sideboard. She scattered a few crayons onto the table and a half-finished coloring page beside them. She stopped at the top of the basement stairs and listened to the hum of the big chest freezer. Satisfied that it continued to work as it should, she closed the basement door and locked it again, just as the doorbell rang.